The morning air was crisp and filled with promise as Sarah Matthews stood at her kitchen window, watching the first rays of sunlight dance across her carefully tended garden. Today was Emma's graduation day. After 18 years of homework battles, soccer practices, and sleepless nights waiting for teenage curfews to pass, their daughter would finally walk across that stage. Sarah's fingers traced the rim of her coffee mug, a gift from Emma last Mother's Day, decorated with painted handprints. From when she was 7, the ceramic had grown warm in her palms, just like the memories flooding through her mind. She could still picture little Emma in pigtails, announcing she wanted to be a veterinarian, then a teacher, then an astronaut, changing her dreams as often as she changed her socks. Upstairs, she could hear David moving around their bedroom, the familiar sound of dresser drawers opening and closing. After 22 years of marriage, she knew his morning routine by heart. Shower first, then coffee, then 20 minutes with his phone checking emails and stock prices. But lately, those 20 minutes had stretched longer, and she'd noticed him stepping outside to take certain calls. The graduation ceremony was held at Riverside High School's outdoor amphitheater, a beautiful stone structure built into the hillside overlooking the valley. Sarah had chosen a seat in the third row, close enough to see Emma's face when her name was called, far enough back to capture good photos. David sat beside her, handsome in his navy suit, the same one he'd worn to his promotion dinner last spring. Dot around them, other families buzzed with excitement. Mrs. Chun from down the street waved from across the aisle, her son Kevin graduating alongside Emma. The Henderson family had brought what looked like half the town to cheer for their daughter. Sarah smiled, remembering when Emma was born, and she'd wondered if they'd ever feel like they belonged in this community. Now, 18 years later, these people were their extended family. The ceremony began with the principal's welcoming remarks, followed by the valedictorian speech about dreams and determination. Sarah found herself holding her breath as they reached the M section of graduates. When they called Emma Rose Matthews, her heart swelled with such fierce pride that she thought it might burst. Emma walked across that stage with the same confident stride she'd had since taking her first steps. Her graduation cap sat slightly crooked, and Sarah made a mental note to fix it for pictures later. Their daughter paused to shake the principal's hand, accepted her diploma, and turned toward the audience with a brilliant smile that could have powered the entire ceremony. The formal proceedings ended. Families scattered across the lawn for photographs and celebrations. Sarah was adjusting Emma's cap, trying to get it to sit properly, when she felt David's hand on her shoulder. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying an odd formality that made her stomach tighten, "I need to speak with you privately." She looked up from Emma's cap, expecting him to suggest they head to the restaurant for their planned celebration lunch. Instead, she saw something in his expression that sent a chill down her spine despite the warm afternoon sun. "I've been trying to find the right time to tell you this," David continued, glancing around at the celebrating families. "I'm leaving. I've already found an apartment downtown. I'll be moving out this weekend." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Around them, graduates posed for pictures with their families. Younger siblings ran between the folding chairs, and the sound of laughter and congratulations filled the air. But suddenly, Sarah's world had become very small and very quiet. "David," she said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper, "this is our daughter's graduation day. Can't this wait until we get home?" "I've waited long enough," he replied, his voice growing louder and attracting glances from nearby families. "I can't pretend anymore, Sarah. I'm 47 years old, and I refuse to spend whatever years I have left living a lie." Emma appeared at Sarah's side, still glowing from the ceremony, but now looking concerned as she sensed the tension between her parents. "Mom? Dad, is everything okay?" Sarah looked at her daughter, then at David, then back at Emma. In that moment, something inside her shifted. A calmness descended that surprised even her. "Actually, sweetheart," Sarah said, reaching into her purse, "there's something I need to show your father." She pulled out a thick manila envelope, slightly worn from being carried around for the past 3 weeks. David's eyes widened as she handed it to him. "What is this?" he asked, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Open it," Sarah said simply. David's hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a detailed report from a private investigator. Pictures of David with a woman Sarah didn't recognize. Financial records showing payments to an apartment rental company. Credit card statements revealing expensive dinners and gifts that Sarah had never received. David's face went from confident to confused to angry in the span of seconds. "How long have you known?" he demanded, his voice rising enough to cause several families to turn and stare. "Long enough," Sarah replied calmly. "Long enough to hire a lawyer. Long enough to document our assets. Long enough to protect Emma's college fund from any impulsive decisions you might make. You had me followed." David's voice was now loud enough that Emma stepped closer to her mother, clearly uncomfortable with the attention they were drawing. "I protected my family," Sarah said, her voice remaining steady despite the chaos she felt inside. "When you started working late every Tuesday and Thursday, when you began hiding your phone, when you started buying cologne I didn't recognize, I knew something had changed." Emma looked between her parents, her graduation joy rapidly fading into confusion and hurt. "Dad, what is she talking about?" David's anger seemed to deflate suddenly, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. "Emma, sweetheart, this isn't how I wanted you to find out." "Find out what?" Emma's voice was small now, younger than her 18 years. Sarah put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Your father has been seeing someone else, honey. He's decided he wants to start a new life." The drive home was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and Emma's occasional sniffles from the back seat. Sarah kept her eyes on the road, her hands steady on the steering wheel, though inside she felt like she was falling apart and pulling herself together simultaneously. At home, Emma went straight to her room, still wearing her graduation gown. Sarah stood in the kitchen where the day had begun, looking out at her garden where everything continued to grow despite the chaos. Inside the house, her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Linda. "How did the graduation go?" "Some pictures." Sarah looked at her phone for a long moment, then typed back, "Emma was perfect. I'll call you later." Some news was too big for text messages. An hour later, Emma came downstairs, having changed into jeans and a t-shirt. She settled beside Sarah on the living room couch, the same couch where they'd read bedtime stories and watch countless movies together. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emma asked, leaning against her mother's shoulder just like she had when she was little and afraid. Of thunderstorms. Sarah considered the question carefully. Was she okay? Her marriage was over. Her life as she'd known it was ending. But as she sat there with her daughter, the young woman she'd raised to be strong and independent and kind, she realized something surprising. "I think I am," she said. "Honestly, for the first time in months, I know exactly what's happening. No more wondering, no more pretending, no more walking on eggshells." Emma was quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" Sarah looked around their living room, at the family photos on the mantle, at Emma's graduation announcements scattered on the coffee table, at the life they'd built together. "Now we figure out what comes next," she said, "together." As evening approached, Sarah found herself back in the garden, deadheading the roses that had bloomed so beautifully this spring. The repetitive motion was soothing, and the fragrance reminded her that some things endured even when others fell apart. Emma joined her, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. "Remember when I was little and wanted to plant a money tree?" she asked. Settling cross-legged on the grass dot, Sarah smiled at the memory. "You were convinced that if we planted coins, we'd grow dollar bills. You never told me it wouldn't work," Emma said. "You helped me dig the hole and plant those pennies." "Hope is never wasted," Sarah replied, accepting the tea gratefully. "Even when it doesn't turn out the way we expected." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and difficult conversations and the practical work of rebuilding a life. But tonight there was peace in the garden they tended together, and strength in the love that remained unchanged despite everything else that had fallen apart. Sarah had thought this day would be about Emma's new beginning. She hadn't expected it to mark her own as well. But as she sat there with her daughter, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, she realized that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow from the most broken ground.